Hello, it's Jill Lance from the APT Travel Group, and today I am so excited and so thrilled to be talking to you about the absolute magic of the Kimberley. The magic of the Kimberley has this tendency to get into your bloodstream almost, and for me, I often find it quite hard to articulate or do justice to the pure magic of the destination that awaits. If I try and sum it up, there's so many diverse components that really do join together to make this destination so magical. It's the landscapes that are forever changing. It is the striking colours of the Kimberley with some of the most impressive sunsets I have ever witnessed. It's the Indigenous history, it's the rock art, it's the lovely walks that you're doing, which often have a bit of a reward at the end of it, which these beautiful gorges that are on offer. And it's just the natural phenomenons that await. And when you think about the Kimberley, and I think about it personally, it's also the remoteness that comes into play. So it very much is such a very, very special destination. And today I am so thrilled to welcome one of our esteemed driver guides, Steve Kelsall, to talk to us about the Kimberley to help bring this destination to life. Steve, how are you?
Great, thanks, Jill. It's a beautiful day as ever here in Broome. I am in Broome, by the way. I'm in a room, but I am definitely in Broome.
I was going to say, Steve, if it wasn't for our beautiful sunshine in the southern states today, I was going to politely ask you to close your curtains so you're not, rubbing it in our face, because I know Broome is always absolutely beautiful. Now, Steve, can I ask I'm so glad you're here because I'm going to pick your brains on so many different components, but can I start by asking how long you've been working for APT as a driver guide for?
Sure, Jill. So 2017, I started as a driver guide. And obviously I've been working through the last couple of seasons. My journey started a little bit different. I actually started as a guest. I did an APT tour in 2014, and that was enough for me. It sold me. I changed career, and now I'm living in Broome, and here I am on the other side.
So the magic hit you as well. The magic of the Kimberley got into your bloodstream as well.
Absolutely. So this is my next best option in terms of, I guess, giving a virtual tour rather than being out on the road at this point in time.
Excellent. So if I could ask you to describe the Kimberley, what does the Kimberley mean to you? You've spent a few years now, so what does it mean to you?
The Kimberley, it's forever changing. Obviously, the seasons here are quite dramatic, especially through the wet season. But there's always something new and different to see. It doesn't matter how long people have been here. It's often wherever you are living, I guess. Sometimes your backyard is the last place that you look. And for me, touring, I don't often get an opportunity to explore. So for me, this last wet season, this photo that you've seen here is from this last wet season. I was working as a caretaker at our Bell Gorge Lodge, and that's just opened my eyes up to a whole new world here. And I actually want to keep exploring, but I want to get out on the road as well.
Excellent. So you kind of briefly touched on the seasonality. So it is very much a monsoonal season. So you've got the wet and the dry season. So can you just enlighten all of us, when is the best time to visit? And putting you on the spot as well, is there a benefit of travelling at the start of the season, mid-season, or towards the end of the season?
Sure. Our season runs pretty much from start of May right through till the end of September, and that's our dry season. In order to take advantage of a wet as close as possible to the end of the wet season, obviously May is that sort of peak period where you get to see the waterfalls and the rivers and the crossings all flowing at their best. Depending on the wet season, that sort of tapers out through the months. Weather-wise as well, May is pretty mild. June, July, winter in Australia, nothing like a normal winter up here. It's blue skies and still swimming, and then we start to warm up in the August, September months. I mean, really any time is a great time to travel, but if you really want to see some of those colour variations from what would be the dusty reds, and then looking at the vastness of the country when it's green, then May is probably the best time to do that. But it's amazing to see it at any time of the year, really.
Excellent. Now, I learned something very unique about you. You are, let me see if I can pronounce this correct, you are an astrophotographer. Talk to me, how did you get into that? What is it? And how can you bring that experience to life for our guests travelling?
So, and this is fairly recent for me. I'm an avid photographer, landscapes. I love landscapes, but being here, especially through the wet season, these shots that you're seeing now, I actually had the opportunity where I could go out and swag out overnight. We had a few meteor showers over a couple of weeks, and I got out there and basically had a go. It was a bit of trial and error, but these are some of the shots that I ended up capturing in our amazing night sky, you know, pretty much zero light pollution. We have a major advantage here in Broome. It's a special place in terms of the sky. We've got both the southern and a part of the northern hemisphere. And again, just that clarity of the sky, the Milky Way, and I was just going to say, sorry, my inspiration was I went to an astro talk here in Broome. Greg Quick, I think some people will have heard of Greg, on the ABC, but seeing Greg and his work and his talk, again, it sort of inspired me to get out there and actually give it a go. Last stop is at our Bell Gorge Lodge.
So I think that's a big memory for me as well, is stargazing in the Kimberley. So can you kind of enlighten as well on how different is it to stargazing in the Kimberley? Because it does become quite a big part of when you are staying in our lodges that we'll get onto in a moment. How does that compare to stargazing maybe in the city fringes or even the eastern seaboard?
It's quite surprising until people get out there not realising how bright it is. Obviously, if the moon's not up, which is, you know, the best time to view, but the Milky Way in city fringes is often very difficult to actually see, whereas here we are spoilt for every single night almost. I mean, it's sunny or it's clear skies over 300 days of the year here. So we've got the best opportunity to enjoy that experience.
Steve, you potentially got one of the best offices in the world with the Kimberley being your own backyard. You poor thing. How do you cope?
Yeah, it's pretty hard. Someone's got to do it.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm a Melbourne boy, born and bred, and coming here and touring, that was enough for me. I was sold, and now this is home. So never take it for granted, the sunsets and all of those sorts of things, but you just got to enjoy.
Fantastic. Now, I have very vivid memories. I travelled through the Kimberley. Well, my last time I went to the Kimberley was with Mum and Dad, and it really feels like it was yesterday because there are just so many magical parts of my experience that I just keep reliving over and over again. And I've been really fortunate in my time with APT to experience a lot of the product, but this would have to be, the Kimberley would have to be, with all sincerity, one of the most unique, memorable and special places for me to visit. And we are very, very fortunate with APT. We have been touring the Kimberley for over 50 years, so nobody is better equipped to take us through the Kimberley. So how about we go off and do a bit of exploring and really pick your brains on your local expertise?
Absolutely.
So I think the best way to start to keep us on track, I know we're probably as passionate about the Kimberley as each other, is to base everything on our 12-day iconic Kimberley tour, because for me it ticks every single must-see and do of travelling the Kimberley. So it's a 12-day tour travelling from Broome to Kununurra, or it can go in reverse. So a really wonderful basis to start from. But before we do get into that and to really explore the wonders that awaits, I think it's a great place to start about our vehicles. Very much custom-designed vehicles, Mercedes-Benz four-wheel drive, purpose-built as well. And this is kind of, for me, this is like a luxurious way of four-wheel driving through the Kimberley, because you've got your huge big panoramic windows, your reclining seats, your individual air conditioning control. Can you talk to us about the vehicle and how it is so well equipped to take us through sometimes some pretty arduous conditions on the roads?
Absolutely, yes. Look, it certainly provides that sort of remote luxury, comfort of the seating. As you mentioned before, we've got recliner seating, there's footrests, we've got USB chargers, obviously fully air conditioned. We've got the monitor up the front. We often run videos and things like that, commentary on the road. Just really comfortable, especially when we start getting on some of those more notorious roads. I mean, the Gibb River Road's one of those, but and the conditions vary all the time. But this is ultimately the best way to see it. It takes all the hassle out for you. I do all the driving, or us driver guides take over that role. So you can just basically take in that amazing view that you get to see out the window and obviously then experience on foot.
I did remember having the rotating seat bases and sitting up at the front next to our driver guide. And that's, for me, gave me the best perspective because I was getting the real knowledge from our driver guide. But yeah, you can't get a better seat than at the front. But the benefit is having that camera at the front. You can always get that true perspective, which is wonderful. What about the safety facilities on board the vehicles?
So obviously we've got all the minimum safety requirements, seat belts being one, and it is mandatory to wear a seat belt in Western Australia. But obviously emergency exits, all those sorts of things are standard on our vehicles. And we go through all of those safety aspects and housekeeping, I guess you'd call it, on day one when we're actually first boarding the vehicle.
Yep, so satellite phones as well, first aid kits naturally?
Yeah, obviously, first aid kits, we carry those both on the truck as well as on all the walks, and the satellite phone as well. That goes everywhere with us, regardless of what we might need it for. Even ringing ahead to let certain places know that, we're an hour out and expect us to arrive at a certain time. So it is great having that ability to communicate, but we've got everything that we need. And obviously with the satellite phones, we've got direct access to our amazing support from the Royal Flying Doctor Service.
Oh, fantastic. So rest assured that you very much at all times are in safe and capable hands. Let's head across to Broome. So regardless, it's an amazing place to either start or finish your journey, depending on whether you're starting or ending in Broome. But Broome itself is a destination rich, full of so much history. You've got the Willie Creek Pearl Farm. I think pearls are very much a girl's best friend as well. But there's so many other things to do and see in Broome. So one thing I'd love to know about is Staircase to the Moon. So where the full moon rises over these exposed mud flats at Roebuck Bay. Can you talk to us about Staircase to the Moon and what else there is to do in and around Broome?
Sure. Obviously, we're seeing a sunset shot there from Cable Beach Club. That's where we have our welcome dinner, farewell dinner on the reverse of the tour. But Staircase to the Moon, there's only a few places, certainly in Australia and on the West Coast, where that can be viewed. Full moon happens over a period of 3 nights. What we have is, with the tidal changes with full moon, Roebuck Bay here in Broome, lowest tide actually reveals the mud flats, and those mud flats have got a little bit of a ripple to them. So as the moon is coming up over the horizon, it's actually all the way from the ground up to the moon. And that's something that all visitors, when they're here at those particular points in time, end up lining the likes of Roebuck Bay at certain points of observation. And that there's a town beach market that's on in those, so it's a big event.
Fantastic. God, we could explore Broome in depth for a lot of time, but I'm going to move across to the Gibb River Road. So 660 kilometres of probably one of the most highly regarded four-wheel drive tracks, definitely in Australia, travelling through the wild heart of the Kimberley. Do you still get a buzz from travelling on the Gibb? Because for me, that was a highlight in itself as well.
Absolutely. And, one of those things, it's still regarded, I guess, as one of the true outback adventures that's still there. And the road conditions are varying all the time with the volume of vehicles. But it's definitely one of those experiences that has to be, you can look at YouTube videos and things like that, but you need to actually experience it yourself. But the Gibb River Road, we've got other roads that we'll be going on, like going up to Mitchell Falls and into the Bungles. They're all different from themselves, but it is an absolute adventure.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to start getting into one of the first walks that we can embark on, which is into Tunnel Creek. And this is where I think your sense of adventure really comes into play. So it's 750 metres of a natural tunnel, I guess, which is carved through the Napier Range. And I do remember that's where your sense of adventure comes into play with your torches and you're coming through. Can you talk to us through the magic of Tunnel Creek?
Yeah, so this is quite unique in terms of all the places that we visit through the Kimberley, obviously being a tunnel, but it's actually an active cave. So we've got actually active stalactites in there as well. There's water crossings. This is where our wet shoes come into play. Torches, as you said. But just as you can see from that shot there, that's actually at the other end of the and basically just taking the view there and also looking back through the tunnel. We actually go back the other way as well, but there's we've got wildlife in there as well, so it's just a bit of a magical experience going through there. It's a bit of a surprise for a lot, unexpected what they actually see.
Talking of wildlife, heading into Windjana Gorge, I do remember having my first experience with a crocodile. In fact, I had lunch with a crocodile in Windjana Gorge. Now, I was very comforted to know that they were freshwater crocodiles, so they're not going to harm you in any way, unless I guess you poke a stick in their eye, but who's not going to get a little bit upset about that? So can you talk to us about Windjana Gorge, but also the wildlife, because that becomes a huge, big part of travelling through the Kimberley?
Sure. That first shot that we saw was a crocodile, a freshwater crocodile in Tunnel Creek. We do see them there, but it's Windjana Gorge where we actually see the crocodiles. Pretty much every single tour are guaranteed to see freshwater crocodiles in that waterhole just there. But obviously throughout the Kimberley, there's a plethora of bird life. We've also got different types of lizards, water monitors, frill-necked lizards. But the freshwater crocs certainly seem to be the big highlight when people see them. And we do see them in different areas throughout the tour, but Windjana Gorge is definitely one of those places where they're in the highest concentration. It's a great spot, as well as it's extremely, visual. It's the limestone range there.
So it's very much a photographer's dream already over in the Kimberley. I'm going to head across. Oh, sorry.
Just saying, bird watchers as well. It's a fantastic place for anyone that's into their bird watching or just nature in general.
And we haven't even got into the Ord River yet, because I know the bird watching there is incredible as well. But before we go and progress, I do want to talk to you about our incredible wilderness lodges. So we have 3 exclusive wilderness lodges: Bell Gorge, Mitchell Falls, and the Bungles. Now, this is my style of camping because it's all hot showers, it's flushing toilets, you've got your private decks. It's like a glamping kind of a philosophy, and they are built with the philosophy of a touch of luxury in the wilderness. Now, here at Bell Gorge, this is one of our first lodge experiences, which is just slightly off the Gibb River Road, next to Imingi Aboriginal community, so very much on traditional owned land. So now I hear that you were a caretaker at Bell Gorge. Talk to me about the refit. It looks absolutely magnificent. Yeah,
so what we're seeing here is one of the new style tents that's fully furnished with what your experience is going to be like at the Bell Gorge Lodge. So that happened leading into the last wet season. We're going through the final stages of that now. But yeah, it's a pretty luxurious experience that you get to have in the outback for sure.
So very much what I love as well is that these lodges are built with minimal impact to the environment. So we are one of the only operators with an advanced eco certification, which really shows our commitment, I guess, to sustainable tourism. And it's probably like a guilt-free pleasure staying at the wilderness lodges, because we know there is minimal impact to the environment. Now, talking of guilt-free pleasures, what you're eating on tour, you should never worry about. But I know that it is absolutely incredible. Our chefs at the lodges, we have executive chefs that are cooking up 3-course meals. I do remember indulging on fresh barramundi. I like to think of myself as a bit of a connoisseur when it comes to crispy pork belly, and it would have to be some of the best I've ever experienced. And I'm putting it out there. I think our wilderness lodges and the incredible work that our executive chefs do, producing some of the best food in the Kimberley. What do you think?
Absolutely. And the good thing to know is the menus that we have across the lodges vary. So each lodge experience you have, it's a different menu. So what you have at Bell Gorge will be different at what you have at Mitchell Falls, will be different at what you have at the Bungles. And
it's all fresh produce, which is lovely, and all open air dining, which I absolutely love as well, which really becomes part of the whole adventurous experience. Now, heading into Bell Gorge itself, this is probably one of the first major walks that we embark on. So by memory, and please, actually, before we do get there, this is an example as well, before I forget, that when you're waking up in the morning, you've got your own little private deck and you've always got a bit of an outlook. So that's another little special factor of staying in our lodges. We are encouraging comments as well. So if anybody has got any questions from Steve and myself, please feel free to comment and we'll cover those as we go through. But now I'm getting into the walk. So we've got the absolutely stunning Bell Gorge. So it's approximately about a kilometre hiking into Bell Gorge over a riverbed of rocks. And this is set amongst some of the most dramatic scenery. So it's kind of sits amongst the King Leopold Range with these huge, big, rugged cliffs in the background where you can hike a couple of sections into Bell Gorge. So, Steve, I absolutely adored Bell Gorge. Can you talk to me about the wonders that await over there?
Yeah, so this would be the first sort of swimming opportunity for people. But we basically walk everyone down to the top of the falls there, above the falls, and then people have the option as to whether or not they are happy to sort of relax and put their feet in the water, have a little bit of a dip at the top of the falls. Or for those feeling a little bit more adventurous, we actually take a different hike and we actually go down to the bottom of the falls for a nice deep water swim.
I do remember doing that. It was very invigorating, and that was one of your favourites.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It's kind of hard because somebody's asked me before, and it was only recently, what was your favourite part of the Kimberley? And I said, I've almost got a top 100, and that was trying to filter it down. But this is probably a great time to ask about walking poles, because I think one thing is you do need a certain level of fitness and agility as well. And what I found was great for my mum and dad was walking poles. So what's your stance on walking poles? Should we be encouraging guests to bring them just for that extra stability?
Yeah, look, obviously some people are used to using them on their own walks that they do themselves. They definitely come in handy. We do carry a number of walking poles with us on each of our vehicles. So if people aren't sure and they come and they want to, sort of have it available, but definitely recommend bringing them if there's something that you're used to. But they definitely provide some extra sort of assistance and, as I said, mine when it comes to navigating some of those rocky riverbeds. But yeah, definitely a good idea.
Heading from Bell into Galvans Gorge, which is probably one of the most secluded gorges that I think that we experience on a tour. But what I loved about the adventure of getting to Galvans Gorge is that ever-changing landscape once again, and travelling through this cattle country. And by memory, walking into Galvans Gorge, you had these baobabs that were growing on the escarpment as well. But probably one of the biggest highlights for me was the first introduction to the rock art. Now, there's Windjana rock art at Galvans Gorge, but it's probably a great opportunity, if you don't mind, Steve, to explore the different styles of artwork, because you've got your Windjana artwork and also your Gwian. So I think I underestimated the cultural significance of these stories. So can you please enlighten all of us about, this incredible rock art that we're going to be witnessing?
Sure, Jill. Obviously, we visit Galvans Gorge would be the first opportunity here. These other photographs that you're seeing are actually up towards Mitchell Plateau. The Munaroo got two major art sites that we visit there. One's majority is more Windjana style artwork, which is unique to the Kimberley, as well as the Gwion, formerly known as the Bradshaw artwork. And we visit those sites. We walk through both those sites. Most of the rock art that we'll visit is definitely up around Mitchell Plateau and on the Mitchell Falls walk itself. So there is so much to see, and we basically provide a guided tour right through those rock arts, explain the different styles of rock art and some of the stories behind those pieces, and also give you a bit of an idea of the age and the history of those pieces. It's something that's forever evolving at the moment. We've got the Kimberley Foundation Australia that are continuously got scientists out in the field to try and more accurately date these pieces, and they're discovering new pieces all the time. But it's definitely a major part of the tour for sure.
Fantastic. I think we've got a couple of questions that seem to be coming through as well, if you don't mind answering some of those. Looks so amazing. What types of shoes? That's a really great opportunity to talk about the footwear. What kind of footwear would you encourage on these walks, Steve?
So obviously each day varies, and we always talk people through the day prior in terms of what they're going to need for the following day, and footwear is one of those important pieces. So for some of the more longer walks, say Bell Gorge, we would recommend a hiking boot or some sort of really solid soled shoe, nothing that's open-toed, combined with a wet shoe, obviously, if we're going to be doing water crossings. And then you've got your more relaxed sort of sandals and things like that, which some of the places that we go to, you have the opportunity to have a more relaxed style of shoe. But definitely a good solid pair of walking shoes, of walking boots, and something that you've worn in before you come on tour.
Yes.
Nothing worse that you want to end up dealing with blisters from a brand new pair of boots or shoes. But definitely really important to be comfortable on your feet.
Before we get into the next question, Steve, this is when we're about to get into Mitchell Plateau as well on that walk, but I got told by our driver guide, and I thought she was having a lend of me, to pack a couple of extra pairs of socks. And she was saying that that's the best grip you're going to be getting at Mitchell because you were going from rock to rock through water. And I tell you what, I tried it and it was absolutely amazing, the grip that you're getting. So would you encourage that as well? Or was she like, is that a common bit of advice to always pack some extra pairs of socks?
Yeah, it was definitely something that I learned myself when I was on the tour, and obviously suggesting that as well. And people are always surprised how effective they are, how simple but effective. And that's something else that I usually talk people through once they're on tour the day before, etc. We're on and put in an extra pair of socks, and that way you can wear those when we're doing those water crossings. Wet shoes are still important for certain walks, say like Tunnel Creek, but socks for some of those slipperier crossings where we just need to get across a small section of water.
Definitely a benefit of getting your local knowledge, because I think other people were going, oh gosh, why weren't we told about that one? I think we've got a few more questions coming through, which is really lovely to see. Are there any different levels of or difficulty of the walks? That's a really great question as well. So we definitely grade our walk. So Steve, I'm going to throw over to you for that question.
Yeah, sure. We definitely grade all the walks. I mean, national parks, etc., have a grading system, but what we've done is we assessed each of the walks independently, I guess, taking that into consideration, but looking at our demographic, the people that generally travel with us. So we've rated those walks. So we have what we regard as easy, moderate, active, and difficult. And this particular iconic tour covers all of those. So you'll be having walks that are quite easy, and then they'll sort of step up from there. But the other thing that we also do is we do talk through each walk in advance of the walk, and we also have walk videos. So we actually show a video that can actually give people a better idea and a visual of what to expect on the walk. So, you know, they're sort of more informed, and it's not just about having a brief conversation. It's sort of, it helps for them to actually visually see what they're going to be facing.
That's so they're well equipped with what's to expect. Before we move along, I think we've got one more question, then we might move on again. The food looked impressive. Do you get any Australian native Indigenous ingredients? Yes, most definitely. Steve, do you know much more about that one? Because I know we use a lot of native and local ingredients.
Definitely. Obviously, bush spices when they're in season. So the chefs obviously source those as part of the menus. But you're also eating things like, you know, local barramundi from either the likes of Wyndham, and any sort of produce that we can get locally, absolutely. And we definitely incorporate that into the menu.
Great question. Now I'm going to move on to Drysdale River Station, because this for me was a whole different experience once again. This is where we have very much a really unique stay in a historic cattle station. And I do remember walking around this property and I almost got lost in the silence, the remoteness, the sounds, the colours. And it really was spectacular for me. But I've remember now and it brings me to another element of the Kimberley, is the characters of the Kimberley. And not only was this place really lovely, but there was a really, what was his name? There was a gentleman who was quite tall and lanky, and he made such an impression of his stories. And that's brought me into the locals of the Kimberley. Not sure whether you can... Chappie, that's it, Chappie. So yeah, Chappie, the characters of the Kimberley, is he still there?
Chappie's back. He came back. He had a break.
Chappie's
he was
back.
doing.
Yeah.
Chappie's back. So I mean, he would have been there this year if we were there, but
Okay.
no. So there'll be a familiar face for sure. But you're right about the characters of the Kimberley. People are certainly going to meet plenty of characters. I mean, hopefully in addition to ourselves. But no, there's that's another aspect of the tour that is a great memory for people.
And it's all the way throughout as well. Now, I'm getting into another incredible experience when we're heading across into one of the highlights. A lot of guests will always comment that was probably one of their most favourite inclusions of our tour, heading into the Mitchell Plateau and Mitchell Falls. So Here we're very much rewarded because the walk itself is incredible, where it's 3.5 kilometres, taking about 3 hours. So we do it at a leisurely pace. So we're doing a hike up to Little Merton Falls and Big Merton Falls, but we are rewarded with what we know and love with APTs, our signature experiences. So you get a helicopter ride out of there for 6 or so minutes, which is all included in the price. But what do you love most about Mitchell? And what I'd love to hear people's reactions when they get off that helicopter ride. Like, what do they think about Mitchell and the hikes and just witnessing this awe-inspiring destination?
Absolutely. Like anywhere throughout the Kimberley, seeing it from the ground or seeing it from a certain perspective is one thing, but you really don't get a true idea, and obviously of the size of the falls itself, until you see them from the air. And the reward for the walk, obviously we get to have a swim at a certain point, but the reward at the end is that flight out and to see the falls in all their glory. And the flight itself, I mean, it's a 6-minute transfer flight, but they do a couple of figure eights over the falls, so it's extremely scenic. You get to see the broad area. You get a bit of a glimpse of the coast, so you actually get an idea of how far inland the falls are. But we also have other flight options that are available for there that's a little bit more adventurous. But just that included flight is pretty spectacular. Those photos that you can see are taken from that helicopter flight.
And it doesn't even do justice. But then heading into the lodge itself, into our second Wilderness Lodge experience, this is almost a bit of a different experience to what we've seen at Bell. I know Bell has had the refit, but Mitchell, I found it was very sophisticated, quite modern. It had a great Indigenous feel as well, so it created a great balance as far as what you're experiencing. But it's the bar as well, having a licensed bar at each of our lodges. It's the lounge, it's the library, the dining area. But there is nothing better than sitting back around the campfire, maybe indulging on a beverage as a reward, just thinking about what everybody has achieved for the day. And the special reward I love at Mitchell Wilderness Lodge is the swimming hole as well. Do you jump in there yourself, Steve?
Yes, I guess when I have time.
You work very hard, I know.
It's a great bonus there. It's such a beautiful spot, and it's literally right sort of in front of where, depending on which tents you end up in. But we've got a deck there and a ladder, and there's some chairs and some towels. But it's there definitely to be enjoyed and made the most of. It's such a beautiful. It's a great way to end the day after doing the Mitchell Falls walk as well. And that's the dining area, the lounge, and the bar.
It's absolutely beautiful there. I do remember indulging in a nice glass of wine, thinking of the day.
Yeah. But to have something like that in one of the most remote areas that we travel to is just, it's pretty special.
Completely blows your mind. Now, if we're heading into El Questro, so covering about 1 million acres when you're heading into El Questro, and what I loved is you see those iconic shots of the vehicle crossing the Pentecost River with the Coburn Ranges, I think, in the background. But heading into El Questro, a common question we get asked is this where they filmed Australia the movie? So can you please answer that for us, please, Steve?
Yes, it's definitely where Australia was filmed, and that part of the Coburn Range is one of the major features. Although from where you can see the truck on the other side of that area there is probably one of the more noticeable areas. But Home Valley Station and El Questro were the two main stations involved in the filming, as well as supporting the crew between the likes of Hugh Jackman and Nicole Kidman. But very iconic. The range on its own, even outside of the film, when you see it for the first time, and we'll actually be crossing it in the opposite direction, it's an amazing experience to come up over the rise and then see that range. It's pretty special. And then obviously the Pentecost River crossing. We always stop there to get some photo opportunities. It's a pretty iconic river crossing. So we get to enjoy a bit of that before we then head straight into El Questro.
It always astounds me how you navigate these, like you do it with ease, like it's just like a breath of fresh air for you. So kudos to you. Thank you so much for everything you do, because I think me navigating those roads personally, I don't really know how well I would go. But we're now heading into Emma Gorge, and Emma Gorge itself is so tranquil. I absolutely loved Emma Gorge, and probably the walk was one of my personal favourites. It really is a sense of achievement. It is so rewarding, but you are rewarded with some of the most incredible views and the gorge at the end of it, of course, where you can have a refreshing swim. But this is where I really learnt you have to stop and smell the roses all the time travelling the Kimberley. Sometimes I got so focused on where I was walking to, and when you stop and just get an appreciation for the sheer magnitude of where you're travelling through to, Emma Gorge is a great place to do that. How fantastic is Emma Gorge and that reward of the gorge at the end of the walk?
It's amazing. And to be swimming there, and just one of the best things to do there is just laying on your back, looking up, and the droplets, the water coming down. That's one of the shots on the walk. So we're walking up into the gorge, and whether it's morning or afternoon, you're getting that amazing light cast on either side of the gorge. It is a pretty special one. It's one of our more challenging walks, but as you can see, the scenery, and especially getting up to the waterfall and having that swim, it's so worth it.
Excellent. I think we've got a question coming through as well, which is lovely to see. Is there much downtime on tour? Do you have suggestions on what we can do if we were to have any free time? I do know, I'm sorry to jump in, Stephen, if I was going to cut you off, but I know that this was a great place for mum and dad to have a bit of downtime as well. They serve amazing coffee at Emma Gorge as well. And there are so many spots. Actually, they did half of the walk. They wanted to sit back and relax and have a coffee. Then they thought they'd do a little bit of the walk. But speaking from personal experiences, there are definitely times for some downtime. Steve, would you like to elaborate on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. And this is one of the stops that allows that for sure. We're 2 nights at Emma Gorge Resort. So we get to explore both Emma Gorge itself, and exactly as you said there is an option if people want to do part of the walk, then they can head back down and enjoy the resort itself. We have myself, a driver guide, and we also have a ranger co-guide there. So we can sort of look after sort of back and front of the group, and we know who's heading back. But as I said, we're 2 nights at Emma Gorge. So 1 full day we're sort of spending across at El Questro at Scene Township, which is sort of, it's not a town, but it's El Questro Township, where there's a cafe, bar, there's a little shop, there's an artist, and the steakhouse we go to, El Questro Steakhouse, is for lunch, Chamberlain River, and we also go, of course, to the beautiful Zebedee Springs.
Oh, I loved Zebedee Springs, and it's so vivid of walking through. God, it was fringed with Liverstone palms by memory, but you're coming in here, and then you're rewarded with these Zebedee Springs, and there's different tiers by memory. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, there is, and that's great for people depending on your level of fitness. It's not that it's the most difficult to get right up to the top pools, but it caters for everybody. Something that's sort of ground level. It's a really easy little walk into there. It's about 500 metres through, as you said, the Liverstone palms there, well shaded. Water temperature between 27 and 32 degrees.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. It was absolutely stunning.
Some of the most crystal clear water you've ever seen. I've got a shot I took under the water, and you couldn't tell if it was above or below the water.
We should have had that one that came into play. But we're heading into the third of our lodge experiences, heading into the Bungle Wilderness Lodge. So our third and our final lodge. Absolutely beautiful once again. Just sitting under the Kimberley stars, especially with your astrophotography and your stargazing ability as well. But nothing beats sitting under those Kimberley stars, just reliving your day. But one of the highlights for me personally was visiting Purnululu National Park. So as you would probably appreciate or know, it is a World Heritage listed site. And in everyone's opinion, it's one of Australia's most iconic and awe-inspiring natural scenery that exists. And what I got to find quite astounding is that I guess these formations were deposited over 350 million years ago. And with thanks to the wind and rain and erosion, they've kind of shaped these beehive formations, but they were only discovered in 1982 by a film crew. What are your guests' impressions when they first see the Bungle Range for the first time, Steve?
So the first shock to them is how late they were discovered, and you're right, it was the Network 7, Channel 7 TV crew, and that was pure chance. They got a little bit of information and they were guided where to go. But the first time they see the domes, the biggest surprise that they have is the sheer vastness. I had someone on my tour last year that they thought, we might be there for half an hour and there might be like 3 or 4 domes. And they were just absolutely blown away. Obviously, we're seeing some shots here at the different light. So we get to see it at different times of the day. But yeah, it's the most unique structure anywhere in the world. And it's really, as you mentioned about the age of it, it's really only been the last 20 million years that those domes have sort of formed. So, we better get out there and enjoy it while we can.
Absolutely. And the other, I guess, like things that ring so true to mind when I think about the Kimberley are, once again, the other components in the walks. You can do Echidna Chasm. So we're walking through almost this natural cleft in the walk to Echidna Chasm, heading into Piccaninny Creek, this winding gorge with the incredible domes in the background as well. And probably one of my most favourite, again, is heading into Cathedral Gorge, which is like a natural amphitheatre which has some of the most incredible acoustics. And a memory for me is we got told to just sit at Cathedral Gorge and just be silent and just take in the whole experience. And a lady on our tour, she was actually an opera singer, and she asked if she could like sing a bit of a tune, and it still gives me goosebumps thinking about that, about being in Cathedral Gorge, being silent, the acoustics with this opera singer. But are there any other experiences you can think of at Cathedral Gorge that have really stood out for your clients, something really, really unique that happens in Cathedral Gorge?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, different driver guides, we all sort of bring something a little bit different to tour. But having the silence in there is definitely something that everybody should experience. And then getting an idea of the acoustics. I mean, some people play a guitar or a didgeridoo. I certainly do something in there, and it becomes quite a memorable experience for them taking that away. But obviously we as a company have provided some extra special experiences. Last year was one with Opera Australia, and a few years earlier with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra in there. So every now and again we have a special event. But just to be there and experience it yourself on foot, and just the sheer size, it's just amazing. And the colours, you're getting a very brief idea. It doesn't really do it justice, but that's why we're saving the best parts for when you come.
Now, I did hear something that you are learning to play the didgeridoo, so I'm setting out a challenge for you, Steve. By the time our next tour comes through the Kimberley, I expect you to be playing the didgeridoo at Cathedral Gorge.
It's something I'm working on over definitely I was hoping to have it done by this now, like over the last wet season, but definitely something I'm going to give a good to play. I can tell you.
Sorry, it cut out a little bit there, Steve. But I think the other thing as well, the other perspective is to get a true appreciation for the bungles. I think doing it via a helicopter flight is really amazing as well. And I think, once again, when you're walking through, it's like a dot on the map of what there is to experience. So, yeah, the helicopter over the bungles for me was very much a true highlight, which is an additional expense, but some of the best money that I have ever spent on tour.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And people often ask, should I do the flight? It's a completely different experience from the air and seeing those colours and the formations. Leading into, obviously, we had a couple of shots there at sunset. We do get to experience a nice relaxed afternoon after the walks, enjoying some bubbles and some bulls while we're watching the sun go down over the Bungle Range. But as you can see here in those shots, just the formations and the colours, you get an idea of the scale, but it's from the air. You really get to see all of those colours and shapes. Again, the vast, that really gives you the full appreciation of how big the range is. We were talking about Echidna Chasm before. That's on one side of the range, and then you've got Piccaninny Creek and Cathedral Gorge on the other side. They're quite different, so nothing is the same wherever you go, and they're both equally as spectacular. Echidna Chasm usually is something that is one of those little surprises for people, or something unexpected.
Fantastic.
In a good
way. And thank goodness. Kununurra, can you talk to us about Kununurra? Because regardless, you're either going to start or finish in Kununurra.
Yeah, so Kununurra, I mean, the first time I went there, I don't know why, it might have been a movie or something I saw. I had this vision of like this terrible dust bowl but it's completely opposite. It's green, but obviously there's a reason for that with the Ord River scheme and the irrigation system. But the Ord River, Lake Argyle, it's just beautiful there. Very different to anywhere else we visit. But again, the cruise along the mighty Ord River is certainly a highlight. Some people forget that it's in the itinerary, and then they're just like, oh, it's such a fantastic experience.
Before we do move on, I think we've got a couple of questions that have come up as well, which I might address. What wildlife do you come in contact with? Thank you so much for your comment. Steve, do you want to touch on that point again?
Definitely. So the earliest parts of the trip are the freshwater crocodiles. The best opportunity for that is in the likes of Windjana Gorge. Lizards, every now and again we might see the odd snake, but safe, of course. But a lot of bird life, agile wallabies, dingoes. But the birds in particular. Actually, I should probably point out, I mean, during the dry season, obviously I won't necessarily say it's the hottest time, but in terms of we're not getting rain. So a lot of the animals that we do have, the native animals, are either nocturnal or they're getting out of the heat. So we often see a lot of them in the dawn and the dusk, unless we visit like a wetland, somewhere where there's water. That's when you'll see a lot of the bird life as well.
Fantastic. Now, heading into the Ord River, talking of bird life again, because I think what I found so fascinating was just the whole history about the diversion dam, but then even how that has helped with the ecology as well. So I think that is, once again, it's an attraction within itself. So the river has widened and increased in depth, so it's really great for the ecology. And the bird life as well, by memory, has increased from, I think it was a stat when I did my tour that there was about 117, bird species in about 1972. And I mean, a couple of years ago, that had increased to 169. So the Ord River in itself is absolutely fascinating. So what I might actually do is throw over to one of our very special guests, who's the director of Triple J Cruises, who organise our cruises on the Ord River, to enlighten us on this incredible, incredible experience.
Hi, I'm Dylan from Triple J Tours, and our company operates on the mighty Ord River here in the East Kimberley. Now, our guests from APT get to experience this river system up close and personal, and it truly is a fantastic river system to explore. The Ord is a large river at 650 kilometres in length, and the area that we operate on as a company is a 55-kilometre section of it, also known as Lake Kununurra, which is between Kununurra and Lake Argyle on the Lake Argyle Dam wall. This 55k section is a controlled body of the Ord. It has a controlled water level, and it's all fresh water. So huge amounts of wildlife are associated with that. And within our tours, you'll get great viewing opportunities of a whole heap of different bird life. It's a Ramsar listed wetland that we travel through. So transient bird species and resident bird species, you'll get fantastic viewing opportunities of. Freshwater crocodiles, if you're interested in crocodiles, we have one of the highest densities of freshwater crocodiles anywhere in Australia on this river system here. We average roughly one crocodile every 10 metres of river at last count. So plenty of viewing and photography opportunities for our guests to get up and close and personal with them. Our tours, there's a variety of them. They are roughly around about 5.5 hours long, majority of them, so it's sort of a half-day tour. So you get a really nice length of time to get a full appreciation of what this river's about. The river is also obviously part of the Ord irrigation scheme, which is a major part of why the town and the area was developed into what it is today. You'll learn a lot about that on our tours. We like to go into that in depth. We'll give you a whole heap of figures on flow rates, types of crops that are getting grown, what's changing, what's new in the area. It's a relatively new irrigation scheme. It's a new town, a new area. So there's always things that are changing, always new ideas and crops coming into the area. So you'll get a really good understanding of that. The Ord, again, as a river, has a significant flow rate coming down it at times. We only have 2 seasons here, wet and dry. And throughout our wet season, the Ord at times has been recorded to be flowing as much as 2,500 gigalitres per day. So to some context on that is that that's enough to feed our capital city here in West Australia of Perth for up to 10 days. So it's a big, big river system. There's lots to explore, lots to learn about within it. And if you come on board with us as one of our guests, we have no doubt that you'll have a fantastic day out and hopefully come out of it with a little bit of a better understanding of what makes the East Kimberley tick, the Ord tick, and what that river system's all about. So hopefully you enjoyed this quick little overview that I could give you.
A special thanks to Dylan for bringing that to us. So before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to add, Steve, about the Ord River in general, or just about the Kimberley in general we haven't shared so far?
Obviously, we've given everyone, I guess, a glimpse. They're not the highlights. So, you know, you've seen Mitchell Falls and a bit of Bell and places like that, but there is so much more, and really the only way to experience it is here on the ground or by ship. Coastal cruise. Places that I'm sure, like yourself, Jill, once you've been, it sort of gets into your blood in a way. You'll either return like I did, and, you know, what happened there. But, you know, for me, life is an adventure. Life's too short, and this is one of those destinations. I know a lot of people have got it on their bucket list and it's there, but you've got to do it.
Yep, and do it earlier rather than later. So yeah. I guess just in summary, we've explored we've only just scratched the surface, I think, of the Kimberley. But I guess with APT's over 50 years of experience touring in the Kimberley, a big shout out to yourselves. Our driver and guides always rate so highly, and you really do help bring the destination to life. And with our small groups of no more than 22, our custom designed four-wheel drive vehicles, and our strong partnerships with the Indigenous landowners, even with our eco certification, it's no wonder that we have been very humbled to have been awarded the best domestic tour operator of 7 of the last 8 years running. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. If you've got any more questions at all, please visit APT, aptouring.com.au, or please see your local travel agent. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. I wish we had longer to explore the wonders of the Kimberley, but maybe we can do a round 2 in the not too distant future.
Thanks, Jill. Really appreciate it, and I hope everyone's enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Enjoy that weather up there too.
I'm going to the beach.
Oh, see you later.